What are layers? Well, it's possible to have multiple continuous effects in play that modify a card's properties. Layers refers to an ordering system that is used to apply these modifications. For example, considering the following two cards, Sylvie, Loved by All, and Beast Soul Visage. Sylvie gives all animal and beast allies you control +1 health and the intercept keyword. Beast Soul Visage gives the linked ally the beast subtype, Pride 3, and +2 power. Suppose you control Sylvie, Loved by All, and a human ally, Honorable Vanguard. If you materialize Beast Soul Visage, linking it with the Honorable Vanguard, what happens? Intuitively, you would correctly assume that since Honorable Vanguard is now a beast, she will now be affected by Sylvie, Loved by All's effect, gaining +1 health and intercept. This works because of layers. In Grand Archive, there are 5 layers. Layer A, effects and rules that modify base values and properties, including values such as activation or materialization costs. Layer B, effects and rules that modify a card or object's types. Layer C, effects and rules that modify a card or object's element. Layer D, effects and rules that add or subtract abilities. And Layer E, effects and rules that modify or set power, life, durability, level, or seed stats, or increase or reduce playing costs. When applying these effects, you start by applying all effects in the uppermost layer. Once applied, those effects are locked in, and then you proceed on to the next layer. Let's return to our example. There are 2 continuous effects in play here. Sylvie, Loved by All, and Beast Soul. Working through the layers, we can see that nothing is affecting layer A, the base values and properties. So next we move to layer B and apply Beast Soul Visage's effect that gives Honorable Vanguard the Beast subtype. Now we can move to layer C, but again we have no effects modifying elements, so we then can just move on to layer D, where we add or subtract abilities. Here, we have 2 effects that are relevant. Sylvie gives all of your animal or beast allies the intercept keyword, and Beast Soul Visage gives Honorable Vanguard the Pride 3 keyword. Now, we move to layer E, where Sylvie gives our animal or beast ally +1 health, and Beast Soul Visage gives Honorable Vanguard +2 power. The end result of this is the same as what we had guessed earlier. Honorable Vanguard has the beast subtype, Pride 3, intercept, 3 power, and 3 health. However, there are other examples where the outcome of applying multiple continuous effects isn't as intuitive. What happens when a nullifying lantern is modified by Fracturize? There are 2 continuous effects in play here. Nullifying lantern, all cards in the graveyard's norm element, and Fracturize removes all abilities from the targeted item. Again, let's work through the layers. In layer A, we have no relevant effects, so we can move on to layer B, where we apply effects that modify a card or object's types. Again, no relevant effects, so we can move on to layer C, where we apply effects that modify a card or object's element. Here, we now apply the effect of Nullifying Lantern, change the elements of cards in the graveyards to norm. In layer D, we apply effects that add or subtract abilities. We now apply the effect of Fracturize, removing the effects of Nullifying Lantern. However, since Lantern has already applied its effect in an earlier layer, those cards retain the norm element and do not revert back to their original element. In layer E, we have no relevant effects, and so we complete our game state check. In this example, we have an unintuitive outcome. Fracturize says that a card loses all other abilities. This effect lasts indefinitely. Yet, Nullifying Lantern will continue to make all cards in the graveyard norm element. What the hell we make sense? Well, yes and no. This interaction is unintuitive, but there is no way to order the layers such as no unintuitive interactions exist. Let's suppose that we approach layering with the mentality that adding or removing abilities from a card should take precedence over anything else. If that is the case, then our layers would be arranged. We apply layer D first, then layers A, B, C, and E. Return to our original example, Honorable Vanguard would then no longer gain the intercept keyword from Sylvie, Loved by All. This is because the first layer applied is where keywords are applied, and only after that, in layer B, does Honorable Vanguard gain the beast subtype. But Honorable Vanguard would still gain the +1 health from being a beast because that is applied in layer E. This leads to an even more unintuitive scenario where Honorable Vanguard is affected by half but not all of a single effect. What if instead we split up adding and removing abilities into separate layers then? While this would address both the examples given, you can see how this could lead to another unintuitive interaction down the road caused by giving precedence still just to removing abilities, not even just splitting up the effects. Consider the following hypothetical card. Sinking Memory, a Regalia with the following effect. Norm element cards in the graveyard lose all abilities. The design intention of this card is to remove the floating memory keyword from norm cards in the graveyard. Consider then the example where both Sinking Memory and Nullifying Lantern are in play, and you have a Tempered Steel in your graveyard. If the first layer we apply removes abilities, then Sinking Memory removes a floating memory keyword from any norm cards in the graveyard. Then after that, we go to layer A, then B, then C, where Nullifying Lantern makes Tempered Steel a norm element card. However, since Sinking Memory's ability has already been applied, Tempered Steel retains floating memory despite now being norm element. While Sinking Memory is a purely hypothetical card made up for this example, it demonstrates how no matter how the layers are ordered, there are edge cases that can, and eventually will, come up that have very unintuitive interactions. There isn't a way that we can change the rules to account for every edge case. The rules for Grand Archive are derived from Magic the Gathering, which the developers have been very open about. Grand Archive is advertised as an anime TCG with Western game design. Western game design, in regards to TCGs, effectively means similar to Magic the Gathering, as Magic the Gathering is the biggest, most well-known, and most influential Western TCG that has come out. And whether or not you like Magic, it is a tremendously successful TCG that has been developing its rules for over 30 years, and layering is the system that they have come up with. The layers in Grand Archive are slightly different because we are playing Grand Archive, not Magic the Gathering, and that is important to remember. However, because the rules are derived from Magic, oftentimes we can look to how rules have been handled in Magic the Gathering to influence how they should be approached in Grand Archive. This video was prompted by the example given above about Nullifying Lantern and Fracturize. Ascent Houston is in less than a week, and Nullifying Lantern is a very prominent card in the current metagame, used to disable the effects of cards like Erupting Rhapsody, Rending Flames, and Fiery Momentum. While so far, Fire Element decks have run cards like Vrooken Acolyte or Spurnt Ash to destroy Nullifying Lantern, there are no Fire or Norm Element cards that interact with Phantasia, which is what Fracturize turns Nullifying Lantern into. Water decks can now play Nullifying Lantern and then Fracturize it themselves, removing its Regalia typing and making it Phantasia instead, while it is still applying its effects, preventing the Fire player from interacting with it. So, what's the outcome of all this? This ruling has come as a surprise and a shock to a lot of players. It is frustrating that a ruling has come out a week before the first major tournament that has such a strong impact on the metagame. Some players feel dismayed, as their potentially weeks of test made use of cards like Rending Flames could now be invalidated by this interaction. But I hope this video showcases that edge cases like this are inevitable. Trading card games are enormously complex, and while a driving factor, sometimes the rules just can't be clear. It is very unfortunate this interaction wasn't discovered until now, but there's nothing that we really could have done about that. Silidar, the lead developer of Grand Archive, stated that this interaction wasn't discovered in their testing, and while they test their game constantly, it's impossible that we expect that they can find every possible interaction. They're humans just like us, and there are only 6 developers for Grand Archive versus the 6,904 members of the Grand Archive TCG Discord at the time of recording this video. No matter how many hours they test, we, the players, will be able to match those hours in a fraction of the time. So don't fault the devs for missing this interaction, or for ruling in a way that's consistent with the pre-existing rules of the game. They didn't discover the interaction, and while we, the community, have had access to these cards for 2 months, with again nearly 7,000 members playing this game, we also didn't find this interaction until now. More than likely, a way for more elements to interact with Phantasia will be released in the next set. So, until then, yes, water will have a distinct advantage over fire aggro decks. But let's take a second and be real. No one was running water competitively anyways.